last one of the 28-day healthy eating challenge. Is everybody rearing to go? Yeah? All right.
Yeah. There we go.
Okay. So a few things we're going to cover today. And as I said, there's no PowerPoints in any of these classes, so it's going to be all visual, all hands-on. We're going to have some cooking demos, things like that. A few admin things first. I've added a couple store tours, so if you weren't able to make the ones last week, I have 2 set for this week as well. One on the 19th, which is Thursday, from 9 to 10 a.m., and one on Saturday, the 21st, from 8 to 9 a.m. The reason that one's so early is it's right before our first weekend meetup. And that brings me to the other admin thing. The weekend meetups are, just like everything else, completely voluntary. You do not need to register for them. They're just a drop-in kind of thing at the community table. See who's hanging out, talk about, what your struggles have been this week, or what your goals are, how you're doing with them, what's going on next week, things like that, okay? Maybe sharing recipe ideas, asking questions, all of that. Would anybody along those lines like to share a little bit about how you did with your goals last week? Anybody clean out their pantry and refrigerator? Like to talk about it? All right, excellent.
Do you want us to try to squeeze in the middle?
If you'd like, instead of standing, I would love it if you found a seat.
Do you have room? I can move down. Squeeze through here.
Who has anything they'd like to share? Don't be shy, right? We're all in this together.
I have a question. You're calling it a meetup, and is that the breakfast?
That's the Breakfast Club,
Okay.
yeah. The Breakfast Club from 9 to 10. So the store tour will fall right before that. Okay? Good. Yes, awesome. Thank you. Let's hear your goal.
My goal is to take milk out of my wheat, replace it with milk.
Okay.
And it was fantastic.
Really?
And
Awesome. Awesome. Are you using it just in cereal or kind of other mediums as well?
I only really eat oatmeal with milk, so
Okay.
I improve in my oatmeal. And I took my oatmeal but we did what oats? We did the rolled oats instead of the steel cut oats.
Okay.
I'm transitioning.
Nice.
And it was great though, but it was really, really good.
Awesome. Success. Almond milk over cow's milk. Great. Anybody else have a goal that they succeeded with?
I don't know if this is a goal. My goal was to try to eat more things like lentils, and since I got a gift of them in my green bag,
Okay.
I was very pleased. So I found this recipe that I made. It still had a little bit of chicken in it, but I cut the chicken and added more lentils, and it was delicious. However, the next day I felt really queasy, nauseous, stomach ache.
Uh-oh.
I thought, maybe I overdid it. I'm not used to eating that kind of food.
Yep.
So
Remember, it's a slow progression. Yes. So starting small, especially with the beans and lentils and raw vegetables, you want to start with smaller portions instead of being so excited about all these new foods. Closer to the end of the 28 days, you'll find that you'll be able to incorporate larger portions of them just by building a tolerance, because it is a shock to your system. It's a large dose of fiber, it's a large dose of nutrients that your body is kind of like, whoa, I don't know what to do with all this great stuff because I'm not used to it, okay? It's kind of like people who tend to eat the same thing every day, and they get kind of in a rut, and they feel like maybe they're not losing weight or feeling as great as they could. The problem is your body becomes very efficient at knowing what to do with the nutrients that it's constantly being provided. So it knows it's getting the same amount of protein, the same amount of vitamins and minerals and things like that. And so there's a secret here as well. So it just becomes very efficient at doing the same thing with those nutrients. So then when you start switching up, that's where that variety of your diet really comes in. And that's what you're looking for, because then you provide a whole host of different nutrients. Your body has to work a lot harder to figure out what to do with them, which cells need those nutrients the most. It kind of increases your metabolism and your body's reaction to a little bit more of a second, okay? So great, good goal sharing. And we'll do a little bit more of that at the end here. We're gonna do a quick review, talk about our whole foods pillar, and do some recipe demos. I've got 2 recipes here we're going to try. And then we'll do a quick wrap up and set some goals for this coming week here, okay? So, jumping right in, who remembers what the 4 pillars of healthy eating are?
Whole food.
Whole foods, good. Well, that one was easy, right? That's what we're all here for today. What else?
Plant strong.
Plant strong, awesome. What else?
Healthy fats.
Healthy fats, awesome.
Nutrient dense.
And there it is, that last one, nutrient dense. There we go. All right, so our 4 pillars, this is what we're living by for the next 28 days. Each week, we're going to take one at a time and really kind of break it down to a greater understanding, focus on recipes that really highlight what we mean by these individual pillars. You'll find that I actually tend to link plant strong and nutrient dense as it goes hand in hand. The more plant-based your diet is, the more nutrient dense it will be as well. So those will go somewhat together, and when Dr. Stoll is here, as well as the education that I'll lead the day after that, you'll see that it'll kind of go hand in hand, okay? Healthy fats will kind of be its own being, and then of course today is its own as well, okay? So this really is the one that we're taking a look at. My stars aren't working here. Today, whole foods, which the other thing I do with that is I say unprocessed, right? And that can mean different things. So on this side of the table, I've got my few examples of whole unprocessed foods, okay? On this side, I have what we would consider more processed. And once we kind of get up and you can see these, you can kind of mill around. But you'll find a lot of these products, in fact, none of these with the exception of the olive oil. We don't sell any of these at our store here as well. We'll get into that a little bit more. But even though these items come, pre-packaged, pre-bagged, you know that there really is only just long-grain brown rice in here, okay? There's no additives. If you weren't really sure, you could always, of course, read the ingredients list. And right here, it'll say organic long-grain brown rice. That's all. They've just packaged it in there for you for your convenience. Of course, like in our store tours that we talked about, a great way to save a good buck and buy whole and processed foods is visiting the bulk department and really going for that, okay? Same thing with like this polenta. You'll find this in our grocery aisles, but this is still a largely unprocessed food. Somebody's just done the cooking for you, but really the only ingredients are the spices and the cornmeal used to make polenta. So they're just saving you a little bit of time. But this would be an excellent other, whole grain option just to mix up some meals during the week, okay? Yes, Mary Kay.
We went shopping today and we were looking at the different kinds of grits and the different kinds of whole grains.
Yes.
And is it, and oats, and is it the ones that go in the microwave that you say don't use, did you say the other day not to use because they're more likely to?
Yes, and we're going to go into that.
Like guar gum and things like that. And
yep, we're going to go into the different types of oats, things like that as well. Absolutely. So right here we've got our dino kale. Of course, any type of leafy green we really want to be focusing on. So again, getting back to those whole foods. What do you notice about our processed foods over here? Shout anything out. There's no wrong answers. Box, bags, right? Bright colors. Kind of reminiscent of the produce department, but they're all the same shape, right? They're still that kind of crazy red. They're very eye-catching, right? And it's the same thing. It's no wonder. This is a lot of food marketing. This is a lot of food science really at play here as well, okay? These bright red colors that you see a lot of, the yellows, we have definitely, we're linked with a sort of visionary color scheme where the reds and the yellows make us feel excited and warm and comforted. And you know what? Food manufacturers know that, and so they, kind of balance that out for you as well. With the grains, and this is really, I think, the best example I can give you for the difference between unprocessed foods and processed and how that kind of goes to play. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass around a couple examples. We've got steel cut oats, we've got whole rolled oats, and then I just have one big package, bag of the quick cooking oats, okay? So when these kind of go around, I want you to take a look at the different grain size of each of these, okay? And each step of the way, you're going to see a different type of processing that we're going to talk about here. So, rolled oats here, steel cut. Give some love in the back here, some steel cut. You guys are keep cooking, and then keep along. There we go, awesome. All right, so when we're talking whole grain, right, we hear this a lot when we do like whole wheat, things like that. This kind of shaded part that I'm doing here, okay, this is a whole grain. Pretend that I'm an art major and you're really latching on to my artistic capabilities here, okay? This is what we call the bran layer of a whole grain kernel, okay? This interior part, this white part, is what we call the endosperm, okay? That's where a lot of the other nutrients are, things like that. And then you have a little part here, which is the germ layer, okay? And basically the germ layer is where you're going to find a lot of the protein in the grain, a lot of the extra internal nutrients as well. If you've ever read a nutrition facts label and you see two words, you see total fiber, dietary fiber, you see insoluble fiber and soluble fiber, right? This part in here is the soluble fiber, okay, the endosperm. Basically, that means it's soluble, so it's soluble in water. It's more likely to take in a water content, okay? If it's soaking in water, if you're boiling it in water, whatever it may be. The bran layer, this is the insoluble water, or fiber, excuse me. So it's not as soluble in water. So in a whole grain, for example, our long grain brown rice, you have the bran layer intact. This is why brown rice takes longer to cook than white rice. White rice has this bran layer removed. It looks like just this side, okay? So it just has the endosperm in there, okay? Just the soluble fiber. The problem is the insoluble fiber adds a lot of bulk to the grain. Not only that, but this is where you're going to find things like iron, selenium, vitamin E, all sorts of different B vitamins, et cetera, okay? So when you remove this, you no longer have those nutrients. They're missing, okay? What happens is by law, if you refine a grain, which basically just means that you remove that external bran layer, by law, they still have to fortify the refined grain with iron and 4B vitamins, okay? The problem with that is those are synthetic additions to a refined grain. Not only that, but they don't add in the selenium, they don't add in the magnesium, the vitamin E, all the other natural nutrients that are found in that bran layer, okay? They also can't fortify a refined grain with the insoluble fiber that adds that bulk. The bulk is important because that's what makes you feel full longer, okay? So, I showed you the oats out there, right? We have quick cooking oats, we have rolled oats, and we have steel cut oats. Steel cut oats, pretend this is just a whole oat grain, and it still has the bran layer. It's called steel cut because what they do is they take steel blades and they cut the grain just like this. So that's where you're going to see all those little nuggets of the whole oat grain, okay? What they do to make rolled oats is they take the whole grain, the whole oat grain, they don't cut it with the steel blades, but they steam it. So they puff it up and then they steam roll it. And that's where you get the rolled out portion there, okay? So it's one form of processing to take that whole oat grain and they're partially cooking it for you by steaming it and then rolling it out. that makes it a little bit more absorbable to water. So if you cook steel cut oats, it still takes longer than cooking rolled oats, right? Just because of you think about the surface area. They flattened it out. There's more cells or more surface area available for the water to be absorbed, okay? Now next, you take your rolled oats and you steam them again, roll them out again so they're even thinner, okay? And then you chop them up into finer pieces. That's where you get the quick cooking oats. So they've gone a step further. They've cooked it for you a little bit more and then cut it up into finer pieces, which again means it's easier to absorb the water. So you have your quick cooking oats that are already partially cooked for you. The problem is that if they cook quicker in the microwave, they cook quicker in our digestive system as well. So if you've ever taken instant oatmeal, thinking that you're making a very healthful, positive choice for breakfast, right? But you're wondering at 9:30 why you're still hungry, or hunger has come back again. That's the difference. You don't have anything left in your gut anymore because it was so easy for your body to digest that, okay? So there's no substance left. Even though the nutritional facts will say it has the same amount of fiber, all of that processing has made it easier for you to digest. So there's no more bulk holding you back, okay? It didn't take quite as long to digest as like the steel cut or even the rolled oats, okay? So each step is a progression, all right? By far, some of the worst choices when it comes to oats are going to be those instant oatmeals that already have the flavoring in them. They add a lot of sodium, they add a lot of salt. Again, that's another form of processing, getting closer to this side of the table. Okay, so we want to minimize that. So it's a progression. If you're not used to the steel cut oats, I definitely think rolled oats are a very healthy option to go with for breakfast. And we're going to demonstrate one really easy way to cook the rolled oats. Okay, if you want to go as far as the steel cut oats, terrific. That's another excellent whole grain source. Okay.
Which one's better? The steel cut, right?
For satiety, absolutely. The steel cut is going to be the less refined, the less processed in that sense, okay? Ultimately, however, both the rolled oats and the steel cut oats are whole grains, okay? I feel like the quick cooking oats are too refined. It's basically a good comparison to white rice, that it's easily digestible, which if you ever get sick and have to start building up your immunity, a lot of doctors will recommend eating white rice. It's very easy on the digestive system, okay? We're all working our way back into health. We want that fiber. We want the nutrients in this bran layer, okay? So we're really trying to focus on that. So it's not just oats, but wheat. So wheat berries are a great one. Quinoa is a whole grain. Barley is a whole grain. Millet, amaranth. There's so many different choices out there, okay? Yes?
What is the most, I understand the steel cut oats are better for you.
Mm-hmm.
And what you just explained, is that's what's better, or is there more nutrition?
Yeah, so each step, from the steel cut to the rolled to the quick cooking, right, it's another form of processing. So again, the more processing that goes into a food, the more nutrient poor it becomes because you're losing nutrients along the way. When we get into healthy fats, we're going to make the connection between the whole olive and the olive oil and what happens through that processing system, and why we're really trying to get away from the use of refined olive oil, because this is a 100% processed item also, okay? When you take it from the whole olive and put it and extract just the oil, okay? All right, the other thing is, with that, the reason we aren't going quite this route, just for the example of the instant oatmeal as well as a lot of our processed foods, what's the catch? Their business is food, and they're trying to sell more of it to you, right? So what do? It must taste good, right? And what they do is they feed into the three most basic flavors that we are aligned to. Anybody know what those are? Salt, sugar, and fat. You bet. And the key is when they're able to put all three of them in one package, right, you like it even more. Physiologically, neurologically, it all connects, it all combines. The problem is that even though some of these products might seem to be more cost effective or more costly, cheaper, okay, when you buy them at the store. What they don't want you to think about is how much they've engineered this food for you to want more of it. Which means what? You take it home and you eat it faster than the other products. Which means you've got to go back to the store and buy more, right? So when you compare it to how often you've maybe been eating other items in your kitchen, pantry, etc., you end up spending a lot more on these products because you've had to buy more to satiate that desire, okay? Because of the salt, the sugar, and the fat. Yes?
On the last point, I just wanted to see, did the steel cut take away the bran layer, and does it make a difference if we microwave or cook in a pot or something like that? So
No, so it does not remove the bran layer, and you'll see it. That's why the kernel is kind of dark. That's the bran layer you see in there. And then when you look at the cuts, internally, the white part is the endosperm. So it's really, imagine this was a 3D version of the grain, and there's just these steel blades that cross-sectionally cut it into like 3 or 4 smaller pieces, okay?
microwave versus cooking on a stove top?
No, as long as you're not draining anything off, even if things kind of go into maybe the milk you're cooking it in or the water, you'll still be getting those nutrients that might have leached out of the grain itself. Good question, yes.
You said something about wheat berries?
Yes.
What are wheat berries?
Wheat berries are, if you go to the bulk department and you see it says hard red winter wheat. So in the store tour, I kind of put some in my hand and they were the whole wheat kernels. So before we even get wheat flour or anything like that, that's what the grain looks like. It's very similar to this as well as the whole oat. But you cook it, it takes a lot longer. A lot of our earth and sea salad on our chef's case in our prepared foods department has wheat berries in it. So if you want to taste wheat berries before you try them at home, you can definitely get a good sample of what that should taste like as well. But yeah, it's another excellent whole grain. Other question, yeah?
Does it have gluten in it?
Wheat berries, yes, because that's a whole wheat grain. Absolutely, yes.
Do the rolled oats have the bran still attached?
They will still have some bran intact, but remember, because it's been steamed as well, it's still breaking down some of that fiber content, okay? So it's not going to create quite as much of that insoluble fiber bulk as the steel cut oats. So it's just each step of the processing takes some of that away. But compared to the quick cooking oats, you bet it's got a ton more of that bran layer in there. Yes?
Sorry, I just had a question about you asking about gluten, and they say whole grain steel cut oats gluten-free.
Mm-hmm.
So what is gluten?
What is gluten?
Yeah.
Gluten is a protein found in wheat, barley, and rye. And sometimes oats are included in that, not because oats contain gluten, but a lot of times they're processed in a facility where those other items are present, and so they worry about the cross-contamination. So Bob's Red Mill is just one product. They make a lot of other gluten-free products that are in designated gluten-free facilities. If you have a gluten sensitivity or intolerance, I would tell you to steer clear of our bulk department because we can't ensure any cross-contamination issues, things like that, okay? Yeah, you bet. All right, so what I will say though is that with the processing as well, keep in mind, you're gonna find these everywhere. I consider us here at Whole Foods kind of in what I call the Whole Foods bubble, okay? Do we sell processed foods here?
Yeah.
You betcha, okay? The difference is that a lot of the items we have here, absolutely, we're gonna still have items that fall very similar to these on this side of the table as well. The difference is that the bubble concept minimizes the products that contain things like certain preservatives, artificial sweeteners, high fructose corn syrup, trans fats, things like that, where label reading becomes very, very important. So those of you who attended the store tour kind of know the difference there, right? Where you really have to be a savvy nutrition facts label reader. I had to pull in products from other stores just because we don't have some of those products here as educational tools, which makes it nice. It makes it an easier shopping experience for you as well, and just knowing that quality standard is in place there, okay? However, a cookie is a cookie, right? It's still processed in that same way, so we're really still focusing over here on this side of the table for the 28-day challenge, okay? So even though we sell those items here, it doesn't always mean that it's falling on the Health Starts Here 28-day challenge, okay? Focusing more on those whole unprocessed foods. All right, If you remember at orientation, we talked a lot about how we're focusing more on cooking at home, right? Well, this unprocessed food approach is really that encouragement to cook from scratch, right? So we really want to build convenience around that. And one of the, you've got two very nice, let's see if I can pull them up here, resources, which will be posted online if you want to share them with other people as well. The first one is called Mighty Bowls of Goodness, okay? And it's basically a table that helps you as a guide kind of go down and start formulating meals that are very unprocessed, but kind of just a quick and easy grab. What do you have? What do you like that you can pull out and throw together in a one pot or one skillet type of meal? Now where it says, you know, beans, things like that cooked, this is where you're going to find your protein as well. So if you wanted to do your 2 or 3 ounces of chicken or shrimp on the Health Starts Here program, that's absolutely fine. That's where that would go, okay, within that. These also have your greens, veggies, and then it gives you a list of herbs and spices to work on combining as well. One second. The second resource here is from Jeff Novick, who's also a dietitian, and he's advised you know, us kind of at a global level as well on a lot of his resources. And he's just kind of a good reference on really basic nutritious eating. And he really believes in what I call the Novick 5, okay? What are those recipes that have 5 or less ingredients and take you, you know, less than 30 minutes to prepare? And we should all have at least 2 of those types of recipes on hand to just go on a quick notion. So there's 5 different kind of recipes that he recommends kind of putting together, and we're gonna demo one of those as well today. But anything that really falls within those 5, he always starts with some sort of canned tomato. He's got canned beans, frozen vegetables, a starchy vegetable, and then spice seasonings to kind of mix it up. And so the recipes after that really give you some examples therein. Question?
Well, on your first resource, 2 questions. First of all, what is nori? And secondly, how is tamari different from regular soy sauce?
Nori is a type of seaweed, okay, so like kelp. And then your other question?
How is tamari different from regular soy sauce?
Tamari is gluten-free, and it actually tends to be a little bit lower in salt content than the soy sauce. Yeah, but you can find it in the same section of the store.
Thank you.
Okay, you bet. All right. So this is also a good reminder when you're looking at these. Have you cleaned out your refrigerator and pantry to make room for these staple food items? So when you're building your ingredient list, when you're building your grocery list, you want to make sure you have these staples on hand. And you bet we're going to be using a lot of convenience items. Remember, we're all about convenience the next 28 days, right? Eating well should not be full of all the headache and hassle. You should not be thinking that healthy eating is difficult here, okay? So frozen vegetables, frozen starches are your friend, and I'm going to bring a bunch of those into our recipe demos today as well, okay? You know, stocking up on these items are crucial. Do you have frozen brown rice, or have you taken the time to over-prepare certain grains and then freeze them yourself for quick and easy meal preparation? You know, frozen sweet potatoes, butternut squash, that's a great way to kind of build a base there. Any type of canned tomatoes are going to be a good solid go-to there. Absolutely, you can throw in fresh there, you know, as your convenience, or you know best what type of time you have on your hands, and that's where the planning really comes into play as well. I encourage you also, if you prepare something at night and you get a positive response from yourself, from your family, your spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, put it in a different folder, like your favorites folder or something like that. Somewhere where you can go back to it when you need to and say, hey, you know what? This one was really good. Instead of me giving you all of these resources in front of you and kind of wondering which one did you enjoy best, okay? So this is to meet the different needs of kind of everybody in the room here. Batch cooking is critical with this, especially with grains, right? Even if a recipe says, I only need 2 cups of you know, brown rice, doesn't matter, don't even measure. Cook up a whole bunch just so you have it on hand. It won't go bad, especially if you keep it, you know, frozen, things like that. which is a great way to do that. If you feel like you're not going to be able to use certain vegetable items before they start turning, cook them up, even if you're not going to eat them that night, and either freeze them or hold them in a Tupperware container. They'll last a lot longer that way instead of just sitting in the fridge as well. Okay? So just kind of some things to think about there as well. All right. The other thing you have at your table is just kind of a resource that came out. It's called Meals for Four for $15. So each of those recipes costs $15 approximately to put together, and will serve 4 people or create kind of 4 different servings. So that's a great one if there's only 2 of you at home, you know, or 1 or 4. You know how you can save some of those for later. So a different lunch, a dinner later in the week, whatever it may be. Okay. I brought up on this side too, kind of what we would consider a frozen meal, right? Remember, this is still a very processed product. The great thing is on the challenge is you are going to be your own smart one, okay? Your own lean cuisine, your own, I don't know what other ones are out there. There's so many, but you're going to make your own frozen meals to pull out just as easily as these are, okay? They're going to be much more nutritious. There's going to be a ton more volume that comes in comes in just this one box. That's going to keep you satisfied. Remember, if you're going hungry, we're not meeting all of your needs. We got to do something about that as well. Okay. Take one and pass them down. I don't know why I started on that, but we've got some here. Mike, take one and pass it down, please. Got it? Might have a few extras out there. What that is it's our bulk basics packet. This goes through different grains, different beans, how to prepare them, how to cook them, different characteristics, flavor profiles, all of that. So if you're wondering what quinoa is, this is a good way to do that. Remember that Whole Foods Market Missions app we talked about on orientation? That's a good way to find out about different preparation methods as well. Okay? Good things there. Questions before we have a little bit of fun with our recipe demos? Yes?
I hate to keep beating the same drum, but I'm looking at the cobbler and it says whole wheat flour. Can we substitute things like almond flour and rice flour for that?
You bet. So whole wheat flour is just a whole grain flour. But you could use gluten-free whole oat flour. You could use almond flour. You could use anything that you want. Amaranth. You could even use a different type of grain altogether. So you bet.
And the other one is, and I think we've talked about this before, but and quinoa. There's quinoa the grain, and then there's that flakes. Are those really heavily processed?
So the flakes you'll find in the cereal aisle, yes, and the flakes are kind of like our rolled oats are compared to our whole oat grain, right? The quinoa is the whole grain. The flakes are a product of processing that whole grain a little bit further, okay? So it's a balance. It would still be what they consider a whole grain product that you can find on the shelves, but it's more processed than just the whole quinoa. If you are looking to experiment with things like quinoa or steel-cut oats, before you even go out and buy a big bunch of them, every day before 10:30, from 7 to 10:30, we have our whole grain bar. Okay, and that's kind of the concept with the weekend meetups or the weekend breakfast club. Go and sample a little bit. We have little, cups there. You can throw some berries in there, a little bit of flaxseed, just kind of add some healthy fats in there, things like that, okay? So you can try both quinoa as a breakfast cereal as well as the steel-cut oats. Also see what it looks like once it's prepared so you know if you're on the right track when you do it at home, okay? Great questions, guys. We'll go back to being able to do more Q&A, things like that. Let's jump into our recipe demos here.